My name is Kayla, and at 32 years old, I never thought I'd claim my power right there at the Christmas table. Every year those gatherings filled me with dread, knowing she'd find fresh ways to tear me down and make me feel worthless. But this year hit different. Her words finally pushed me to end it all for good, with that check sealing the break. It wasn't the first time. Back when I was 16 during a neighborhood barbecue, she compared my grades to my brother's in front of all the guests and spat out trash like it was nothing, laughing it off as a joke while I burned inside. Those moments stacked up, and I'd been quietly preparing something special, a way to show my worth and walk away forever. Before I dive into my story, I want to know what time you're listening and from which city. I'm thrilled to see how far these tales reach. Hit like and subscribe for more real accounts of standing strong in tough spots. Growing up in a suburban neighborhood outside St. Louis, Missouri, our house looked like the ideal family home from the street, a 2-story brick with a welcoming porch, well-kept lawn, and holiday lights that went up every season without fail. But behind those doors, things were far from perfect. My mother, Teresa, put on a charming face for outsiders like neighbors or school parents, but at home, her words hit like targeted strikes. Kayla, straighten up, people judge girls who slouch. Kayla, that shirt makes you look sloppy. Kayla, a B in math, that's not cutting it. My younger brother Anthony got a completely different experience in the same house. 3 years junior to me, he was treated like the prize from the start. Anthony's already reading chapter books at 5. Anthony's great at debate, he takes after my side. Anthony just draws people in so easily. My father Paul watched it all unfold from his recliner or work desk, a steady mechanic who hated rocking the boat. He'd catch my eye or give a subtle nod after her barbs, but instead of stepping in, he'd enable it by agreeing to keep peace. Your mother's right, he'd say quietly later. She pushes hard because she cares. It never came across as care, it came across as rejection. Those comments dotted my childhood, little digs that added up over time. Meanwhile, Anthony's path was paved smooth. At family barbecues, Teresa would brag about his straight A's to relatives while dismissing mine as average, even when I outperformed him in subjects like science. One Thanksgiving when I was 12, she compared our report cards right at the table in front of aunts and uncles, calling my effort trash because it didn't match his perfect scores, then laughing like it was lighthearted. The room chuckled along, but it stung deep, planting the first seeds of resentment. I started noting every slight in a private journal, vowing one day I'd prove my value beyond her judgments. Paul's role made it worse. He'd nod along during those moments to avoid arguments, saying things like Teresa knows best when she'd favor Anthony's sports trophies over my academic awards. It taught me early that speaking up led to more tension, so I internalized it instead. School became my escape, where results came from effort alone. I pushed hard, earning top grades and leadership roles in clubs, but at home, Teresa would downplay them. An honor roll mention. Anthony's on there too, and he balances sports. Paul's silence reinforced it, his occasional sympathetic pat feeling hollow without action. As I got older, the favoritism showed in bigger ways. When Anthony wanted a new bike at 10, they got it immediately. My requests for books or art supplies got, we'll see, delays. At a neighborhood block party when I was 14, Teresa praised Anthony's social skills to the crowd while critiquing my shyness as awkward, whispering later that I was trash at fitting in. Paul overheard, but just changed the subject, enabling her pattern. I began saving allowance money, secretly dreaming of independence, recording each incident to remind myself why I needed to break free. By high school, the divide was clear. Anthony got private tutoring for tests he barely needed while I studied alone in my room. Teresa signed him up for elite camps, claiming he had natural talent, but dismissed my interest in coding classes as a phase. Paul went along budgeting for Anthony's extras but questioning mine. One evening after a school event where I won a tech award, she compared it to Anthony's soccer medal in front of family friends, calling my achievement trash compared to real skills. The humiliation fueled me. I started applying for scholarships, quietly building a plan to leave without their support. Despite the constant comparisons, I excelled. Valedictorian in high school, full ride to a state university for computer science. Teresa's response, a backhanded, good for you, but Anthony's on track for law school already. Paul echoed her with a weak, we're proud. But his inaction spoke louder. Those years hardened my resolve. I kept track of every favoritism act, from holiday gifts, Anthony's always bigger, to daily praises. His minor wins celebrated, mine ignored. It wasn't just hurt, it was a quiet fire pushing me to succeed on my own terms. The breaking point came in my senior year. At a family reunion, Teresa recounted old stories highlighting Anthony's easy baby days while painting me as difficult from the start, then slipped in another trash comment about my teenage rebellion, meaning my pushback on her rules in front of extended relatives. Paul laughed nervously along, enabling as always. That night, I decided enough was enough. I packed my acceptance letter and scholarship details, telling them I'd move out for college without needing their help. Teresa scoffed. Paul stayed silent, but inside, I knew this was the start of reclaiming my life. The unfairness had built too high, hinting at the explosion waiting down the road. After leaving home for college, I built a life far from Missouri in San Francisco, where I landed a senior developer role at a tech startup by 30. My apartment overlooked the bay with foggy mornings and Golden Gate views that felt like freedom. I had close friends, a rescue dog named Cooper who greeted me with sloppy kisses, and a career that kept climbing, lead on a payment app that hit national tech blogs last year. From the outside, I'd made it, but family gatherings still dragged me back to that kid desperate for approval that never came. About a year ago, I started sessions with Dr. Garcia, who helped me piece together the patterns from my childhood. She talked about unhealthy family dynamics, how favoritism can shape someone into a scapegoat while another gets the golden child treatment. It clicked. I'd been carrying those old wounds, letting them define me. You get to choose how much power those patterns hold now, she said. You've built something incredible, own it. Her words lit a spark, but not just for healing. I twisted them into something sharper, a quiet excitement to finally show my worth, not just with words, but with something undeniable. I'd been saving, aggressively funneling bonuses and side projects into a separate account. One evening, sitting in my apartment with Cooper sprawled across my lap, I checked the balance, $50,000. A smile crept up as I imagined sliding that check across the table, shutting down years of being called trash with cold, hard proof of what I'd built. It wasn't just money, it was my way of flipping the script, turning their dismissal into my power. I didn't tell Dr. Garcia about this plan. I framed it to her as setting boundaries, but deep down I was gearing up for a showdown. When the Christmas invite came, my gut said skip it. I had a solid excuse, a work conference in Seattle overlapping the holiday, but the more I thought about it, the more I wanted to go, not to please anyone, but to face them on my terms. Dr. Garcia had said boundaries meant deciding who gets access to you, and I took it as permission to walk in ready to end things if it came to that. The idea of that check in my purse, my ace in the hole, made my pulse race, not with fear but with anticipation. I prepped like it was a mission. Made a roasted beet salad knowing my mother would find fault but wanting to show up anyway. Picked a navy cashmere sweater and tailored pants, professional yet festive, with a silver necklace that screamed quiet success. Practiced responses to the usual jabs on dating, I'm good. Focusing on my path. On comparisons, everyone's got their own pace. I ran through Dr. Garcia's advice like a mantra, you're not that kid anymore. You control the narrative now. The night before the trip, I sat at my desk, Cooper snoring nearby, and reviewed my account again. The number stared back, $50,000, my years of hustle in digits. I pictured their faces when I'd lay it down, especially hers, and felt a rush. Not anger, not pain, just certainty. I'd been called trash one too many times, and this was my answer, ready to hit like a shockwave. Driving the 6 hours from San Francisco to our Missouri suburb, I played podcasts to keep my head clear, but nerves crept in as I passed familiar exits. My shoulders tightened, memories of past holidays bubbling up. Not the barbecues or birthdays from childhood, but fresher stings like last Easter when my mother questioned my career choice in front of cousins, or the Christmas 2 years ago when she praised Anthony's law firm job while shrugging off my promotion. I shook it off, focusing on the road. Cooper's leash was packed for the return trip, a reminder of the life waiting back home. As I hit St. Louis outskirts, I whispered to myself, I'm 32, not chasing their validation anymore. The check sat in my purse, a silent promise of what was coming. I wasn't just showing up for dinner, I was walking into a moment that could change everything, and I was ready. Pulling into the driveway of my childhood home outside St. Louis, I gripped the steering wheel, the familiar brick house staring back with its perfect holiday wreath and twinkling lights. My purse held the check, a quiet weight fueling my resolve. I grabbed the roasted beet salad, a bottle of bourbon, and stepped out, whispering one last time, I'm not here for their approval. The front door swung open before I could knock. My mother, Teresa, stood there in a crisp red blouse and apron, her dark hair pinned in a flawless holiday updo, every inch the suburban hostess. Kayla, we were starting to think you'd bailed. Her voice carried that familiar mix of accusation and disappointment. No hug, just a quick scan of my outfit. Long drive must have worn you out, you look it. Before I could reply, my father, Paul, appeared, his warm smile a flicker of comfort from my childhood. Good to see you, kid, he said, pulling me into a hug. I leaned in, catching the scent of his aftershave. Glad you're here, Dad? The house was immaculate, decked out in Christmas cheer, coordinated stockings, a glowing tree, the smell of ham and cinnamon candles thick in the air. In the living room, relatives were already mingling. Aunt Monica, my mother's older sister, waved from an armchair. Next to her sat cousin Lauren with her husband, Ben, and their 2 kids in festive plaid. Uncle Todd, my father's brother, broke off from a chat to greet me with a bear hug. "There's my tech star," he said, his grin genuine. Todd always saw through the family's uneven treatment, offering quiet support. "How's San Francisco treating you?" he asked, curious about my career in a way my parents never were. I started to answer, "New projects going strong," but Teresa cut in. "Kayla, get that salad to the kitchen. I've got plenty of sides, so it might not make the table today." The jab landed, but I forced a smile. "It'll keep." In the kitchen, I found my brother Anthony arranging a charcuterie board with his wife Vanessa. At 29, Anthony had checked every box. Top lawyer at a St. Louis firm, married to Vanessa, who left nursing to run their household new home 10 minutes from here. "Kayla," he said, smiling warmly. Despite the favoritism, we'd kept things civil, though never as close as I wanted. "Drive okay?" "Not bad," I said, setting the salad on the counter. Vanessa gave a tight nod. "That sweater's bold new," her tone hinted. I couldn't afford it, though my salary likely doubled Anthony's. "Picked it up a while back," I said, sidestepping. Teresa swooped in, fussing over already perfect dishes. "Vanessa, this board is stunning. You've got such a knack." Former nurse Vanessa said with practiced modesty. "Just a homemaker now learning the ropes." "And you're a natural," Teresa beamed. "Anthony's so lucky." I poured myself a bourbon, offering it around. Todd took a glass with a knowing wink. "So Kayla," Teresa started checking the oven, still coding away at that startup I told my church group. "You're in computers." "Software development," I corrected softly. "Same firm, lead developer, now mentioned it last summer." "Oh, right," she brushed off. "Anthony just won a huge case. His firm says he's partner material already." The pattern kicked in. "Lift Anthony, dim me." I sipped, recalling Dr. Garcia's words, "Her view doesn't define you." Small talk chipped away at me. Teresa noted my skin looked tired from city stress. Aunt Monica praised my apartment's bay view, only for Teresa to question if San Francisco was safe for a single woman. Lauren asked about my dating life, her tone implying 32 and unattached was a red flag. I answered neutrally, but each dig pulled me back to old habits of shrinking myself. Out front, as neighbors dropped by with holiday cookies, Teresa critiqued my posture loud enough for them to hear, comparing it to Vanessa's grace. Paul caught my eye, his face apologetic, but he said nothing, letting her words hang. Anthony glanced my way, uncomfortable, then looked down. Vanessa avoided my gaze, adjusting her earrings. The tension built with every interaction. Teresa's Bob's shopper in front of outsiders, Paul's silence enabling her, Anthony and Vanessa's discomfort doing nothing to stop it. Todd pulled me aside near the staircase, his voice low. "You holding up? She's relentless tonight." "Same old," I said, forcing a grin. He squeezed my shoulder. "Your success bugs her. She can't handle you doing things your way." Before I could respond, Teresa called out, "Everyone, dinner's ready, find your place cards." In the dining room, I saw my seat far from Todd, between Ben, who barely spoke, and Monica's friend from church, a stranger. Classic isolation move. The table sparkled, white linens, heirloom china, crystal catching chandelier light, a centerpiece of pine cones and red berries. Teresa's obsession with appearances screamed through every detail, as if perfection could mask the cracks. As we sat, she announced, the gratitude round her voice bright but edged. My heart sank, knowing this tradition was a minefield of veiled jabs, each one setting the stage for something bigger. Her eyes locked on me, and I braced for the storm. As the gratitude round began, my mother, Teresa, stood at the head of the table, her smile polished but sharp, the Christmas chandelier casting a glow on her perfect hostess act. "I'm so thankful for this family," she said, voice dripping with performance, "especially for Anthony and Vanessa, who always make time to visit and bring such warmth." Her eyes flicked to me, a pause heavy with intent. "And Kayla for squeezing us into her busy city schedule." The jab landed, framing my San Francisco life as selfish neglect. I gripped my fork, keeping my face neutral. My father, Paul, went next, mumbling about health and good fortune, safe as always. Anthony thanked his law firm for new opportunities and Vanessa for her support, his glance at me apologetic but fleeting. Vanessa gushed about family traditions, her tone pointed as she eyed me, the career-driven outlier. When my turn came, I kept it short, grateful for growth in these gatherings, I said, voice steady. Teresa's lips twitched, expecting more groveling for her hospitality. Food passed, ham, mashed potatoes, green beans, and talk shifted to family updates. Cousin Lauren shared stories of her kids' holiday pageant met with Teresa's loud praise. Then she pivoted to children in general, pulling out her phone to show photos of a neighbor's new grandbaby. "Precious little thing," she said, passing the phone. Everyone cooed. When it reached me, I smiled. "Sweet kids. Nothing like grandkids." Teresa sighed, staring at me. "Hope I get to experience that joy someday." Anthony shifted uncomfortably. "Mom, we've said we'll start when ready." "Of course, dear." She patted his hand. "You and Vanessa will be amazing parents." Then, unable to resist, she added, "Though Kayla should think about it soon. 32's not getting younger." The table quieted. I took a slow bite of ham, chewing deliberately. "I'm happy with my life as is," I said evenly. "Not everyone needs the same path." "Oh, sure," Teresa replied, her sweetness fake. "Some women choose work over family, hope that doesn't lead to regrets." Uncle Todd tried to shift gears. "Kayla, tell us about that app launch, saw it in the news." I started explaining our fintech project, but within seconds Teresa cut in. "Speaking of success, Anthony's up for partner youngest in his firm's history." Anthony looked down. "Mom, it's not locked in yet." But she barreled on, detailing his brilliance, drowning out my moment. Todd caught my eye, shaking his head slightly. As Maine's continued talk veered to local news and holiday plans, Paul steering away from politics when it crept up. I spoke minimally, focusing on my plate, silently repeating Dr. Garcia's words, "You control your narrative." But Teresa wove in jabs: "My city lifestyle too hectic, my cooking skills lacking, even my dog Cooper inferior to purebreds." By the time plates cleared, I'd counted a dozen slices, each one stoking the fire I'd carried from San Francisco. Dessert arrived, pecan pie. Teresa's pride and talk turned to family memories, a dangerous territory where she rewrote my past. "Remember when Kayla broke that ornament at 7, she started framing me as clumsy." "Kids mess up, Mom," I said lightly. "Anthony never did," she countered. "He stayed out of the kitchen," Aunt Monica noted, but Teresa ignored her. "Kayla was always less graceful than others. Piano lessons didn't stick, unlike Vanessa's talent." The old shame hit, memories of failed recitals under her critical gaze. I pushed it down, sipping coffee. Todd jumped in. "Kayla crushed it in high school coding competitions, real skill there." Teresa waved it off. "On skills, Anthony's legal briefs are taught in his firm now." The redirects piled up, my charity work countered by Anthony's pro bono. Monica's question about my apartment twisted into praise for Anthony's new house. By my second pie slice, I'd tallied 9 direct comparisons, 5 lifestyle digs. The room felt warmer. Paul loosening his tie, Todd's sleeves rolled up, only Teresa pristine. Talk hit family traits. Anthony inherited Paul's logic, Vanessa their charm. Then Teresa pivoted to the past. "Before Anthony, Kayla was our only child, always in the way," she said, her tone sharpening. "I was 5, I pointed out, smiling to stay calm. Yes, so needy, threw fits if plates weren't right." Monica softened it. "Kayla doted on Anthony when he arrived, always singing to him." For a moment it felt kind, but Teresa twisted. "Kayla struggled when Anthony came. We weren't ready for kids, so soon after marriage she changed everything." The air tightened. Paul coughed. "Teresa, maybe clear the desserts." "Just being honest," she said, voice pitching higher. "We were newlyweds when I got pregnant with Kayla, had to scrap our Europe plans. Paul stuck in that mechanic job instead of his own shop." My ears buzzed. Not new, but so blunt here. "Mom," Anthony started, uneasy. "Oh, Anthony was planned," she pressed, ignoring him. We waited, set up properly. She took a delicate bite of pie, then struck. "Kayla was trash. Wish you'd never been born. Sometimes life would have been easier." She laughed lightly, expecting agreement. Nervous chuckles followed. Vanessa giggled. Lauren smiled awkwardly. Paul gave a strained laugh, eyes on his cup. Only Todd, Monica, and Anthony stayed silent, shocked, glancing between us. The room slowed. I set my fork down, tines aligned, hands in my lap, heart racing. Every slight, every trash from years past crystallized. She'd said it aloud, casually, expecting me to take it like always. But I was done. I stood silent, stretching, and reached into my purse. The check, $50,000, felt heavy as I slid it across the table toward Teresa. Everyone saw the amount, gasps rippling. "You called me trash," I said, voice clear and steady. "Here's what this trash is worth. Don't contact me again." Teresa froze, hand trembling as she held the check. The room went dead quiet. Paul opened his mouth. "Kayla, wait," but it was too late. I grabbed my coat purse steady and walked out, their stunned faces burned into my mind. Walking out of that dining room, the cold Missouri air hit my face, the stars shop above the quiet suburb street. I didn't run. Each step to my car was deliberate, the weight of the moment settling in. Inside, I sat for a second, the check's impact replaying, Teresa's trembling hand, the table's stunned silence, Paul's too late plea. Driving away, I glanced back. Paul stood at the window, his face unreadable. No sign of Teresa. Instead of heading straight to the hotel, I pulled into a 24-hour diner on the edge of town, needing space to process. The place was near empty, just a couple of late-night regulars at the counter. I slid into a booth, ordered coffee and a slice of pie I wouldn't eat, and stared out the window. My phone buzzed. Anthony's text. "Kayla, you okay?" That was unreal. "Mom's upstairs, says she's sick. Dad's a mess." Part of me felt the old guilt, trained to smooth things over, but a stronger part felt free, like a chain I'd dragged for years snapped. I replied, "I'm fine. At a diner. Talk tomorrow." Dots danced, then his response. I was floored by what Mom said. Way over the line. "Sorry I didn't speak up." His words stung with unexpected weight, a crack in his usual distance. The server, noticing my expression, asked if I was all right. "Family holiday," I said with a weak smile. "Got heavy." She nodded. "Happens too often. Stay as long as you need." More messages came. "Aunt Monica, text when you're safe at the hotel. Uncle Todd. Damn proud of you, that took guts." Even Cousin Lauren texted, self-focused as always. That was awkward. "Ben says we're leaving early tomorrow." Paul stayed silent, likely managing Teresa's fallout. At the hotel, I went through my routine mechanically, the adrenaline fading into exhaustion. One last text from Teresa. "How dare you humiliate me like that in front of everyone? That was private. Apologize or we're done." Her pattern was clear. She'd wounded me, yet I owed the apology. Years ago, I'd have caved to keep peace. Not now. I turned off my phone and slept, a deep calm settling despite the storm. My body knew something fundamental had shifted. Morning brought clarity mixed with a strange lightness. I checked out early, stopping at a coffee shop to gather my thoughts before the drive back to San Francisco. I'd planned to stay another day, maybe meet Anthony for coffee, but the pull to my own life was stronger. I drafted replies to Teresa's text, deleting each one too soft, too sharp. Finally I spoke my truth after yours. "I'm not sorry. If you want a real relationship, it starts with accountability. I won't pretend your words don't hurt anymore." Sent phone on silent, I hit the road. The 6-hour drive let me process anger, sadness, but mostly liberation. Back in my apartment, Cooper's excited leaps were a balm, his uncomplicated love grounding me. I took him for a long walk along the bay, the San Francisco fog clearing my head. When I checked, my phone, messages piled up, but none from Teresa. Anthony wanted to talk soon, his tone earnest. Todd and Monica left voicemails, supportive as ever. Paul, using Teresa's phone, texted, "She's too upset to reply. We need space. Don't reach out for now." For the first time, their rejection didn't cut. It was a relief, a clean break from decades of trying to fit their mold. A month later, in Dr. Garcia's office, the January light soft on her desk, we unpacked it all. Cooper curled at my feet, my new therapy companion. "How do you feel post-holiday?" she asked. "Lighter," I said honestly. "First Christmas without their expectations, it's freeing." Dr. Garcia nodded. "Your mother's reaction is classic when challenged. She casts herself as the victim, you the aggressor. That relief you feel means something. It means the tie was more draining than nourishing," I said, stroking Cooper's ears. "I spent years chasing her approval, exhausting myself." She smiled. "That awareness is your strength now. How's it showing up elsewhere?" It was everywhere. I spoke up bolder in work meetings, landing a promotion to team lead. I ended a stale dating situation that felt forced. I even called out a rude coworker who'd been passive-aggressive for months. Setting boundaries got easier after facing the toughest critic. Meanwhile, word spread in our Missouri suburb. Monica shared that neighbors whispered about Teresa's outbursts, some siding with me after hearing about the check. The community judgment stung her. She canceled her usual book club, citing stress. Anthony called a week later in town for a conference. We met at a San Francisco cafe, the awkwardness fading fast. "I'm sorry," he said over coffee. "I let Mom's favoritism slide too long. It was easier than fighting her." His honesty hit hard. "We were both caught in her script," I said. "But I could have been better," he insisted. "What she said at dinner wasn't new. I should have called it out years ago." We talked for hours, unpacking our different childhoods. His guilt from being favored, my hurt from being sidelined. "Vanessa fits Mom's ideal," he admitted. "Sometimes I wonder if that's why I chose her." I shared my own truth. San Francisco was partly an escape, my wins sweeter without her diminishing them. That lunch marked a new start for us, fragile but real. Spring came and Teresa stayed silent. Paul tried to call, his voice strained. Kayla, can we talk? Your mother's struggling, maybe you could apologize to smooth things over. I cut him off. Dad, I'm done pretending her words don't hurt. No contact unless she owns it. He sighed and I hung up, blocking their numbers. It wasn't anger, just clarity. Acquaintances said Teresa spun the story, painting me as ungrateful, herself as blindsided. It didn't faze me anymore. By summer, my life had shifted. A bigger role at work, new friends from a hiking group, a guy I started seeing who valued my directness. The inner voice echoing Teresa's jabs quieted, replaced by confidence. Therapy with Dr. Garcia moved from healing to planning what I wanted next. She was proud. That check wasn't just money, it was a boundary, a reclaiming of your worth. A year later, I hosted a small Christmas in my apartment, Monica, Todd, Anthony, without Vanessa and close friends. No Teresa, no Paul, no old weight. The table felt like family chosen for care, not obligation. Looking around, I felt gratitude for the moment that broke me free. From this I learned cutting unhealthy ties isn't selfish, it's survival. I used to think enduring was strength, but true strength is protecting your peace, choosing who gets access to you. To parents, I'd warn favoritism scars kids differently, but deeply avoid it, see each for who they are. To anyone stuck in a cycle like mine, recognize the signs early, set boundaries, and don't fear walking away for your own fulfillment. You're worth it.
Jennifer, we're downsizing and you're first to go, Samantha said with a grin that made my stomach turn. Effective immediately. The fluorescent lights in the conference room seemed to buzz louder as those words hung in the air like poison. I sat there for a moment, processing what had just happened, while my colleagues around the table avoided eye contact. After 14 years of dedicated service to Westbrook Dynamics, this was how it ended. My name is Jennifer Calloway. I'm 46 years old, and until this morning, I was the senior account manager at Westbrook Dynamics in Charlotte, North Carolina. For the past 14 years, I had poured my heart and soul into this company, managing some of our largest corporate accounts and building relationships that went far beyond simple business transactions. I wasn't the flashiest employee. I didn't play office politics. And I certainly didn't kiss up to management. But I was reliable, consistent, and deeply respected by everyone who mattered. Our clients. When Samantha Kerr took over as our new department head 6 months ago, I knew trouble was brewing. She was one of those people who confused being loud with being effective, who thought that shaking things up was automatically an improvement. During her first week, she made it clear that she wanted to revolutionize our approach to client relations. She scheduled unnecessary meetings, implemented new tracking systems that nobody asked for, and constantly questioned methods that had been working perfectly for years. I think we need to inject some fresh energy into this department, she had announced during one of her endless staff meetings. Some of these account relationships have gotten a little too comfortable, a little too personal. We need to maintain professional distance. I remember thinking at the time how wrong she was, but I held my tongue. In my experience, business relationships built on genuine trust and personal connection were the strongest foundation a company could have. But Samantha saw things differently. She viewed my long-standing relationships with our key clients as a threat to her authority, rather than an asset to the company. She didn't understand that when David Chen from Solar Tech Industries called me directly, instead of going through the main switchboard, it wasn't because I was overstepping boundaries. It was because we had built a relationship based on 14 years of mutual respect and successful collaboration. As I sat in that cold conference room, watching Samantha's satisfied expression, I realized that this moment had been inevitable from the day she walked through our doors. She had been looking for a reason to get rid of me, and the convenient excuse of company downsizing had finally given her the ammunition she needed. What she didn't realize was that she had just made the biggest mistake of her professional career. Looking back, I should have seen the signs earlier. The way Samantha would interrupt my client calls, insisting on being included in conversations that had been perfectly fine without management oversight for years. The way she scrutinized every expense report I submitted, questioning lunch meetings that had been standard practice since before she was even out of college. The way she would make snide comments about old-school approaches during team meetings, always looking directly at me when she said it. My relationship with Westbrook Dynamics hadn't always been this complicated. When I started here 14 years ago, fresh out of a nasty divorce and desperately needing stability for my 2 young children, the company felt like a lifeline. My previous boss, Robert Harrison, had taken a chance on me despite my limited experience in account management. "Jennifer," he had told me during my interview, "I can teach someone the technical aspects of this job, but I can't teach genuine care for people. You have that quality, and that's what makes great account managers." He was right. Over the years, I had developed relationships with our clients that went far beyond the typical vendor-customer dynamic. When Thomas Reed from Grandstone Manufacturing was going through his father's illness, I was the one who helped coordinate delivery schedules around his family obligations. When Patricia Vance from Emerald Marketing was launching her new division, I worked overtime to ensure her project timeline was met, even when it meant sacrificing my own weekend plans. When Michael Torres from Nexus Development was celebrating his daughter's graduation, I was the one who remembered to ask about it during our quarterly review meeting. These weren't just business relationships. They were human connections built on years of trust, reliability, and genuine concern for each other's success. My clients didn't just work with Westbrook Dynamics because of our competitive pricing or our service offerings. They worked with us because they knew that when they called, they would get someone who understood their business, remembered their challenges, and cared about their outcomes. But Samantha saw all of this as unprofessional. During one particularly uncomfortable meeting 3 weeks ago, she had pulled me aside and said, "Jennifer, I need you to understand that our clients are paying for a service, not a friendship. I think you've gotten a little too emotionally invested in these relationships." I had bitten my tongue then, but I should have known that was her way of building a case against me. The irony wasn't lost on me, that while Samantha was criticizing my emotional investment, our department consistently outperformed every other division in the company. Our client retention rate was 94%, our average contract value had increased by 30% over the past 3 years, and our customer satisfaction scores were consistently the highest in the industry. But none of that seemed to matter to someone who was more interested in asserting her authority than understanding what actually made the business successful. The final nail in my coffin came 2 weeks before that fateful Monday meeting, during what should have been a routine client review. Patricia Vance from Emerald Marketing had called me directly, as she always did, to discuss some concerns about a project timeline. It was a simple conversation, the kind I had handled hundreds of times before. But this time, Samantha insisted on joining the call. "Patricia, this is Samantha Kerr, Jennifer's supervisor," she had interrupted within the first 5 minutes. "I wanted to personally ensure that all of your concerns are being addressed at the appropriate management level." The tone she used was condescending, both to Patricia and to me. I watched helplessly as the conversation grew increasingly tense, with Patricia clearly uncomfortable with Samantha's aggressive approach to what should have been a collaborative discussion. After we hung up, Patricia sent me a private email that I'll never forget. "Jennifer, I've been working with you for 8 years, and I've never had to deal with someone speaking to me like I'm a problem to be solved rather than a partner to be supported. Is this the new direction for Westbrook Dynamics? Because if it is, we need to have some serious conversations about our future together." I forwarded that email to Samantha, thinking it might help her understand the damage her approach was causing. Instead, she called me into her office and accused me of undermining her authority and encouraging client complaints. That's when I realized that no matter how professionally I handled the situation, no matter how much I tried to work within her new system, she had already decided that I was the problem. The downsizing announcement, when it finally came, felt almost like a relief. Not because I wanted to leave. I loved my job and was proud of what I had built here, but because it meant the uncertainty was finally over. Samantha had been looking for a reason to get rid of me, and she had finally found her excuse. "We need to streamline our operations and eliminate redundancies," she explained to the room full of shocked faces. "Jennifer's position, while valuable in the past, doesn't align with our new strategic direction." The way she said it, with that satisfied smile, made it clear that this wasn't about company efficiency. This was personal. As I packed my belongings that afternoon, my colleagues kept stopping by my desk to express their disbelief and anger. "This is insane," my teammate David whispered. "You're the backbone of this department. How can they think this is a good idea?" But I just smiled and thanked him for his support. I had learned a long time ago that burning bridges rarely led to anywhere productive. What Samantha didn't know, what she couldn't have known because she had never taken the time to understand the foundation of our business, was that she had just triggered a chain reaction that would reshape the entire company. My relationships with our clients weren't just professional courtesies. They were the invisible threads that held our most valuable partnerships together. I spent Monday evening at home, sitting on my porch with a glass of wine, watching the sunset paint the Charlotte skyline in shades of orange and pink. For the first time in months, I felt a strange sense of peace. The constant tension of walking on eggshells around Samantha was gone, replaced by an odd combination of uncertainty and liberation. My phone had been buzzing all afternoon with messages from former colleagues expressing their outrage, but I had turned it off around dinner time. I needed space to think. By Tuesday morning, my phone was exploding with notifications. I had 17 missed calls, 43 text messages, and 67 emails. My first thought was that something had happened to one of my children, so I quickly scrolled through the messages with growing confusion. They weren't personal emergencies. They were business calls from my former clients. The first voicemail was from Thomas Reed at Grandstone Manufacturing, and his voice was tight with barely controlled anger. "Jennifer, I just heard what happened. This is absolutely unacceptable. I've been trying to reach someone at Westbrook since yesterday afternoon, and nobody seems to know anything about our upcoming project deadlines. I need to speak with you immediately about our contract." The second message was from Patricia Vance at Emerald Marketing, and she sounded even more upset. "Jennifer, they can't just eliminate you without consulting their major clients. We have 3 active projects with deadlines next month, and you're the only person who understands the specifications. I've left 4 messages for your replacement, and apparently, they haven't assigned one yet. This is a disaster." As I continued listening to the voicemails, a pattern emerged. Every single one of my major clients had called, not just to express sympathy for my situation, but to voice serious concerns about the continuity of their projects. David Chen from SolarTech Industries was particularly direct. "Jennifer, I don't know what kind of game Westbrook is playing, but if they think they can just remove the one person who actually understands our business and expect us to start over with someone new, they're out of their minds. Call me back. We need to talk." I made myself a cup of coffee and started returning calls. The conversations that followed were both heartwarming and professionally explosive. Every client expressed genuine personal concern for my well-being, but more importantly, they all shared the same sentiment. They had been working with Jennifer Calloway, not just Westbrook Dynamics, and my sudden removal felt like a betrayal of their business relationship. "Jennifer," Patricia said when I called her back, "I want you to understand something. When we signed our contract with Westbrook 3 years ago, it was because of you. Yes, your company had competitive pricing, but what sealed the deal was knowing that we'd have someone who actually cared about our success. If you're not there anymore, then honestly, I'm not sure why we should be either." Michael Torres from Nexus Development was even more blunt. "I've been in this industry for 25 years, he told me. "I've worked with dozens of vendors, and most of them see us as just another account number. You've always treated us like a partner. That's not something you can just replace with whoever they pull from their staff roster." By noon on Tuesday, I had spoken with all 5 of my major clients, and the message was unanimous. They wanted me to know that their loyalty had been to me personally, not just to the company I worked for. Several of them asked if I was planning to land somewhere else soon, because they would be very interested in continuing our business relationship in whatever form that might take. That's when I realized that Samantha had made a catastrophic miscalculation. She had assumed that client relationships were interchangeable, that the value I brought to the company was easily replaceable with someone else who could read from the same scripts and follow the same procedures. She didn't understand that business relationships, particularly in our industry, were built on trust that took years to develop and could be destroyed in an instant. Wednesday morning brought the first wave of formal consequences. I was having breakfast when my phone rang with a call from Patricia Vance, but this time her tone was purely business. "Jennifer, I wanted to let you know that I'm sending a formal letter to Westbrook Dynamics this morning, requesting an immediate meeting to discuss the future of our contract. After yesterday's conversation, my team and I spent the evening reviewing our agreement, and we discovered that there's a clause allowing us to terminate for cause if there are material changes to the service team without our consent." I nearly choked on my coffee. "Patricia, I don't want you to make any decisions that might hurt your business just because of what happened to me. This isn't about loyalty, Jennifer, though I appreciate everything you've done for us over the years. This is about protecting our business interests. We have critical projects launching next quarter, and the institutional knowledge you've built about our operations isn't something that can be transferred in a training session. If Westbrook wants to maintain our partnership, they need to figure out how to get you back involved, whether that's reversing their decision or arranging some kind of consulting agreement." An hour later, David Chen called with similar news. "Jennifer, I'm formally requesting a contract review meeting with Westbrook's senior management. If they can't provide adequate assurance that our project timelines and quality standards will be maintained without you, then SolarTech will need to explore other options. I've already had my team reach out to 3 of your competitors for preliminary discussions." By Thursday, the situation had escalated beyond anything I could have imagined. Thomas Reed from Grandstone Manufacturing didn't just request a meeting. He sent a formal notice of contract termination, effective in 30 days, unless Westbrook could restore the service team configuration that was in place when this agreement was originally executed. His letter was copied to Westbrook's chief executive officer, their general counsel, and the entire board of directors. Michael Torres took a different approach. Instead of threatening termination, he suspended all current projects pending a comprehensive review of service capabilities and personnel changes. This effectively froze over $2 million in active contracts until Westbrook could provide guarantees about project continuity. The most devastating blow came from Patricia Vance on Friday. She didn't just threaten to leave. She actually did it. Her termination letter was short and professional. "Due to material changes in account management personnel without client consultation, Emerald Marketing is exercising its right to terminate this agreement effective immediately. We will be transitioning our business to a vendor who can provide the level of personalized service and institutional knowledge that our projects require." That same day, I received a call from someone I hadn't expected to hear from. Robert Harrison, my former boss who had retired 3 years earlier. "Jennifer," he said, "I hope you don't mind, but Patricia Vance called me this morning. She wanted my perspective on the situation at Westbrook, and she also wanted to know if I had any recommendations for alternative vendors." He paused for a moment before continuing. "I told her that the best vendor I could recommend was you, if you were interested in starting your own consulting practice." The idea hadn't occurred to me before, but as Robert explained it, the concept made perfect sense. You have the relationships, you have the expertise, and you have the trust. All you need is the business structure. Patricia indicated that if you were to start your own firm, Emerald Marketing would be very interested in becoming your first client. By the end of that week, I had received similar inquiries from 3 other former clients. What had started as a termination was rapidly becoming the foundation for something entirely new. Monday morning of the following week, I decided to drive past the Westbrook Dynamics building on my way to meet with a business attorney. I wasn't being vindictive. I genuinely wanted to see how the company was handling the crisis that had been building over the past week. What I saw in the parking lot told me everything I needed to know. Samantha's car was there at 7:30 in the morning, along with vehicles belonging to 3 members of the senior management team. Emergency meetings were clearly in session. Later that day, my former colleague David called me with an update that was both shocking and completely predictable. "Jennifer, you need to know what happened this morning." Samantha called an all-hands meeting at 8 a.m., and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. Apparently, the executive team spent the entire weekend in crisis management mode. According to David, the scope of the client relations disaster was even worse than I had realized. In addition to the 3 major accounts that had already terminated or suspended their contracts, 2 other significant clients had requested meetings to reevaluate their vendor relationships. The company was facing the potential loss of nearly 60% of their major account revenue, all within a span of 2 weeks. The best part, David continued, was when Samantha tried to blame the situation on your unprofessional relationship boundaries with clients. She actually suggested that you had somehow manipulated these companies into retaliating against Westbrook. The executive team didn't buy it for a second. Chief Executive Officer William Bradford had apparently asked some very pointed questions about how the department head could have been unaware of the extent to which major client relationships were tied to individual personnel. When Samantha couldn't provide satisfactory answers, he asked for her resignation, effective immediately. "Jennifer," David said, "Bradford specifically asked me to get your contact information. He wants to schedule a meeting to discuss options for bringing you back, possibly with a significant promotion and salary increase." I thanked David for the information, but I had to smile at the irony. 2 weeks ago, Samantha had been so confident that I was expendable. Now the entire executive team was scrambling to undo the damage her decision had caused. But the truth was, it was too late for Westbrook Dynamics. Not because I was vindictive, but because the business landscape had already shifted. That afternoon, I met with Patricia Vance and Michael Torres to finalize the terms of my new consulting firm, Callaway Client Relations. Patricia had agreed to provide startup capital in exchange for guaranteed priority service, and Michael had offered to serve as a reference for other potential clients. Within 3 days, I had signed agreements with 4 former Westbrook clients, with 2 more companies expressing serious interest. The real validation came on Thursday, when I received a call from David Chen. "Jennifer, I wanted you to know that SolarTech has decided to terminate our contract with Westbrook effective next month. But more importantly, I wanted to ask if you'd be interested in a very different kind of business arrangement." What David proposed was beyond anything I had imagined. SolarTech was expanding their operations and needed someone to manage relationships with multiple vendor partners. Instead of just hiring me as a consultant, they wanted to bring me on as their vice president of vendor relations, with a salary that was nearly double what I had been making at Westbrook. "The position is yours if you want it," David said. "But I wanted to run it by you first, because I know you've got your own consulting firm getting started." For the first time since this whole ordeal began, I found myself facing a choice between 2 excellent options, rather than scrambling to recover from someone else's poor decision. Tuesday morning, exactly 2 weeks after Samantha had gleefully announced my termination, I made my decision. I called David Chen and accepted the position at SolarTech Industries, with one condition. I wanted to maintain my consulting firm for select clients on weekends and evenings. He agreed immediately, understanding that my outside relationships would only strengthen my ability to serve SolarTech's vendor management needs. The news spread quickly through Charlotte's business community. By Thursday, I had received congratulatory calls from 6 different industry contacts, including 2 executives from companies that had never worked with Westbrook Dynamics. Word was getting out that the clients hadn't just left Westbrook, they had followed me to something better. Friday afternoon brought the most satisfying moment of this entire experience. William Bradford from Westbrook Dynamics called me personally to make one final attempt at bringing me back. His offer was generous: department head position, 40% salary increase, guaranteed autonomy, and a formal apology from the board of directors. But it was too late. "Mr. Bradford," I told him, "I appreciate the offer, but I've already accepted a position that offers me both financial growth and professional respect. More importantly, I've learned that my value isn't dependent on any single company's recognition of it." The conversation was cordial, but brief. There was no point in dwelling on what might have been when the future was already so clearly mapped out ahead of me. That weekend, I received the final piece of news that completed this entire saga. David from my old department called to let me know that Westbrook Dynamics had announced they were closing the Charlotte office and consolidating operations with their facility in Atlanta. The loss of major clients had made the local operation financially unsustainable. "Jennifer," he said, "I hope you know that everyone here understands what really happened. Samantha destroyed in 2 weeks what took you 14 years to build." I felt no satisfaction in Westbrook's downfall, only a quiet sense of vindication that my contributions had been valuable, even if one person had been too blind to see it. 6 months later, I was settling into my new office at Solar Tech Industries, looking out at the Charlotte skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. My title was Vice President of Strategic Partnerships, and my responsibilities had grown far beyond what I had originally been hired to do. David Chen had been right when he predicted that my relationship-building skills would be valuable in multiple areas of their business. Callaway client relations had also flourished beyond my expectations. What started as a way to maintain relationships with 4 former clients had expanded into a boutique consulting firm specializing in B2B relationship management. I was working with 12 companies now, and had turned down 6 others because I didn't want to compromise the quality of service by growing too quickly. The most unexpected development came when Patricia Vance recommended me to speak at the Regional Business Leadership Conference about the importance of personal relationships in professional settings. The presentation went so well that I was invited to write an article for Business Excellence magazine about the hidden value of authentic client relationships. 2 weeks ago, I received a LinkedIn message from someone I hadn't heard from in months, Samantha Kerr. She had found a new position with a smaller firm in Raleigh and wanted to congratulate me on my success and clear the air about any past misunderstandings. I read the message twice before deleting it without responding. Some bridges, once burned, weren't worth rebuilding. Yesterday, I had lunch with Robert Harrison, my former boss who had first encouraged me to value relationship building over transaction-focused thinking. "Jennifer," he said over dessert, "I've been watching your career progression with great pride. You've proven that doing the right thing, even when it's not appreciated, eventually leads to recognition from people who matter." Looking back on everything that happened, I realized he was absolutely right. As I sat in my new office, watching the bustling activity of a company that valued what I brought to the table, I understood that Samantha's cruel grin that Monday morning had actually been a gift in disguise. Sometimes the best revenge isn't plotting someone's downfall, it's building something so successful that their betrayal becomes irrelevant to your happiness.